Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm glad you could join us for this afternoon's session. I'll be leading you through this particular session this afternoon. My name's Nick Haig. I'm one of the directors at B2B International, and being part of and instrumental with a fair number of our B2B clients in developing their customer experience strategy. So very much an overview presentation today, but hopefully can share with you and take questions from you in terms of some of the experience we've had with our clients. I think just to start off with, that we all know customer experience, what it is. It's the practice of designing and reacting to customer interactions for the purpose of meeting and exceeding customer expectations, and therefore in trying to increase customer satisfaction, loyalty and advocacy. And I think through the Fred Reichhold and the whole MPS phenomenon, then customer experience has definitely grown in interest over the years. There's lots of statistics out there banded around about how it's 20 times as expensive to get a new customer as it is to retain one. 5% increase in customer retention can lead to 80% in profit. So, and that's probably down to the cumulative effect of business done in the long term. So it's no surprise that more and more people are looking at customer experience. And I think what we do know is it's not possible for your customers to not have an experience. I mean, from their point of view, the many interactions that they have, if they touch our product or service, see it, smell it, taste it, hear it, sense it, use it, step on it, over it, in it, it becomes part of the customer experience. So for the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'll take you through what we see as the 10 steps or 10 key steps to think about when building your B2B customer experience strategy. In terms of step one or tip one, you do need to start from the top, and it's crucial that we do get buy-in from the top of any company when developing a customer experience strategy. Too often, these customer satisfaction programs might be the brainchild of marketing or something like that, but and you can waste money in carrying out, say, a customer satisfaction survey, but too often that's box ticking exercise that actually ends up in not delivering any change within an organization. And so for the fact that it's got to come from on top in terms of them being bought into it, then without the leadership team, no action will result in the long term, and resource will be wasted. And I think in that first instance, it is crucial that communication does come from on top to start the whole process, and are instrumental throughout in terms of driving that particular change and driving the customer centricity of an organization from on top. Tip number two, and actually I'd probably say from all the work that we've done across the world with all our clients, that this is a really crucial step. It's self-evident that customer experience programs are no longer owned by Insight or even market research divisions within companies. They have their own division, or at least they have their own division in companies where we see most traction with people and companies becoming more customer centric, because someone needs to own the customer. The whole customer experience role, it can't be juggled with other responsibilities, and so only those companies that do have a dedicated customer experience team. And it might be that it starts off as maybe a joint role within marketing, but if it does start to get sway within a company, then it's soon that a customer experience manager, director would become their title. And we've seen it with clients where over the course of 5 years, for example, then from just one person looking at that to actually being a team of 11 people in some instances, where there's teams of analysts and everything else that are working alongside us, the market research provider, in terms of the customer experience program. Tip number three, I think too often people come to us and say, you've done this before, Nick, you've done this before, B2B International, let's just take your blueprint and roll with that within our organization. And I think what we do know is that you can't cookie cut this in terms of being able to just take experiences from one and use it exactly in another organization. You do need to build a customer experience program slowly, and There'll be some learnings, of course, from other companies and organisations, but you do need to tailor it and build it slowly, specific to your company's particular requirements. So understanding that whole journey that customers take, it really is crucial, and customer journey mapping is probably the first step in the first instance that will help you map out that process, understand the different touch points, understand the different interactions of how you might touch or influence a customer's life throughout the journey of how they, from awareness through to interest and actually onboarding through to when maybe there's problems, and understanding that whole what happens when customers aren't happy is crucial, and is step number 3. Following that whole journey mapping stage, it is a linear sequential program that we'd advise if you're starting out afresh. And I think you can't just build a customer experience program and have various different pulse surveys or touch point surveys within there. You do need to get that grounding of what the customers are looking for, and so we call it a deep dive, deep initial understanding of your customers, so that you know where you stand, what the benchmarks are, but also which of those touch points that you'll have pulled out from the customer journey mapping exercise, but which of those touch points in the customer journey are most impactful, because this then might guide you in the wider trackable program that you might want to put in place, but also to understand, with whom, which of the decision-making unit on the customer side are interacting at each of these touch points as well, because we know in business-to-business markets there could be a whole array of different people, from marketing and technical through to sales, who could be speaking to us, interacting with us in different ways. Following the deep dive, then actually you're in a good place to know a lot of benchmarks. You'll have a lot of detail, and really that's wave 0, or the real benchmark of which you can build. Again, I think it's really just to emphasize that there is no off-the-shelf solution here. So when building a customer experience program, then how many customers you need to interview, what medium or form methodology you might use to speak to customers. Are you going to use telephone? I mean, it is still the tool of business to business, although email, SMS, sometimes even face-to-face if you're looking at key accounts and where you might be wanting to have different interactions or speak to them in a different way. So the methodology of how you might be wanting to interview customers, the frequency, from that deep dive, you might see certain touch points that are really impactful and you want to keep a measure on over the course of time. So it might be event driven, but equally you might want to have a tracker in place where you're speaking to customers on a month-by-month basis, so that you can report back to board and have that leverage, or that the eyes on the pulse of what customers are saying. Or it might be, in some instances, I mean, we have a fair number of B2B clients where we're not talking thousands and thousands of customers, and therefore it might just be that building that customer experience survey, that you might just be running a 6-month survey where you're just checking in with them and making sure that everything's okay. This is in some instances where customers might be into the hundreds. There's lots and lots of talk. I've already referred to NPS and Fred Reichhold, but sometimes which metrics should we use in B2B markets? Then the NPS and Net Promoter Score is a metric that I'm sure all of you out there are aware of, and it's future gazing. It looks at loyalty, but we shouldn't forget that satisfaction. We do need to measure satisfaction as well. That's looking at something slightly different, how satisfied they are with the past interaction, looking back in history. And there's other things that have come around, other metrics such as the customer effort score, which I think is very relevant in some instances, especially when we know in B2B markets that whole ease of doing business is a key driver on loyalty and doing business in the future. And all the time, building that program from the ground up, who within the organization, who are we speaking to in our customers' organization, but also who will deal with any issues that arise with dissatisfied customers. Because if you have got a tracker in place, then you need to have the framework and the hierarchy set up in terms of how you're going to deal with those customers on a tactical basis if there's something that's not quite right and people need things sorting out. And I suppose that leads me on to tip number 6, where it's called distribute the findings, but of course those findings could be anything from an online real-time reportal or a detractor management system that we might develop. So this could be tied into your CRM system at your company's end, but equally, who'll deal with that? Who's dealing with the masses of data we might be picking up? Equally, often on a quarterly basis, then reporting outside of the reportal might be needed, or outside of the detractor management system, because that's giving you the eyes and ears of what the customers are talking about real time, and you can manage that internally. And you might have certain plugins to look at social media if that be relevant, although in B2B markets it's quite rare that is the case. But in terms of getting the information widely within, we talked at step number 1 of coming from the top down, but we need to bottom up in terms of getting people bought in, disseminating the information through, and getting the voice of the customer internally within our client organization. So utilizing forms of reporting, infographics, videos, posters, to the sense of cardboard cutouts of what the customer looks like, as well as the typical reporting of what it all means and what action needs to be taken too. We're talking a lot about customer experience here, and I think one of the key important things is not to be too navel-gazing when designing a customer experience survey, because although we'll have lots of benchmark data, then also it's important that we know how we're benchmarked against what the marketplace is looking for too. So don't just rely on customer data alone, I think, is the message in terms of developing a market-leading customer experience study. Getting benchmarking of how you perform against your competitors is crucial. It's the only way this can be gathered without bias through a potential customer survey that might be carried out in parallel. And I think, also thinking about the funnel of customers and any lost customers, understanding the experience they've gone through, and maybe working in some lost customer surveys, as well as integral or integrating a lot of your internal data to match it back. So in terms of spend, in terms of how they interact as well, it just enriches the whole data set that us as researchers like to dive and analyze to feed back actions that can be taken. Tip number 8, he could start this as tip number 1, but I mean, I think as the program evolves, we know that developing a world-class customer experience program, it does start from within. It starts from on top. We need to have customer experience teams that are owning the customer internally within our companies. But this alignment of your employee engagement program really does need to come about to start to gain traction within an organization, because with your customer experience efforts, engaged employees do equal improved retention, which people do business with people. They don't always do business with the corporate brand. So this improved retention not only increases productivity, but the service and relationships given that in turn, and it is circular, deliver great customer experience, which of course delivers back loyal customers that keep on coming back for more. So I think tip number 8, although it's down there in the pecking order of number 8, there's no real sequential order of where this can start, and the employee engagement program does need to be closely aligned with the customer experience program too. Tip number 9, I mean, I think it's important. We've talked to communication, and communication is vital for any successful program. So from the top down, from the bottom up, how we get the findings into the organization and the voice of the customer known, but making customer feedback an internal KPI. I mean, I think often where we might even remunerate, and that could be account managers, it could be any of those customer-facing people, so that everyone strives for a win-win result. That really is that remuneration, and it need not necessarily be monetary remuneration, but making sure that there is that motivation within, and setting certain KPIs, even if it's around performance that you expect them to deliver against around one of the key touch points, really does keep the motivation going. And finally, it's really just to say that this is a never-ending cycle. There's always new things to look at. There's always customers out there that are interacting with us on a daily basis, and we shouldn't let the intensity drop in anything like this. So we've talked of the reporting, monthly and reporting and quarterly reporting back to either the customer experience team or the leadership team is essential. And most importantly, making sure that in that closed loop system, if you do have something in place, that detractors are dealt with promptly, but not to forget, in that whole net promoter score sequence, that passives are in there also, and equally promoters are to be thanked for doing business. And I think, again, with some of our market leading customer experience programs we've developed, then promoter clubs and promoter loyalty schemes have definitely started to result in greater pull-through in terms of financial gain where those have been put in place. So that is a very quick run through in terms of 15 minutes talking through a market-leading customer experience program. There is opportunity for questions, and I can see, actually, as we've been going, there's a couple of questions come through. So taking them in order, one person said, how long does it take to implement a program from scratch? It's a tricky one, and I think I suppose it depends on where you start in the journey. But how I've taught today in terms of from the mapping through to the deep dive through to developing the program, I think you probably do need around and about 1 year for that mapping, deep dive, and starting to put the pieces in place. And I think only in an organisation after around and about 2 or 3 years, through real hand-holding of us helping through consultancy and delivering the data, do we start to see that NPS needle move and start to really feel that the customer centricity within an organisation is starting to change. Another question is around, I talked of building the map and what key touch points do you typically see in B2B markets? Again, it really does vary. I mean, we can't say exactly which those touch points would be without getting deeper with your company in terms of what those are. But typically, some of those touch points that are impacting and do impact on loyalty, when I think then credit control could be in there, delivery, of course. We know that people drive the loyalty side of things. So in terms of account manager visits, it could be technical service, it could also be customer service. So there could be any one of touch points there. That's a couple of questions that have been asked. Did anyone else want to throw a question out there? This is a webinar. It's there to stimulate discussions such as this, and so if there are any other questions following, or you're interested, then as I say, my name's Nick Haig. You can see that we have offices around the world. I'm based out of our Manchester office, so if you do want to drop me an email or give me a call, then please do so. I hope it's been useful, and hopefully we can catch up in the future. Thank you.